Hello, I am Brita Wallace with Wallace Family Ministry. I'm a parent and family educator. Welcome to my channel. We are on day 5 of the Love Dare, which this one is for marriages. I also have the Love Dare for parents going on simultaneously, so definitely check that out if you didn't know about that, and make sure you get your books so you can fill in the wonderful questions. And it's just a short little page with some writing. If you don't have the book and you have audio instead, or the book's on Audible, or you've rented them from your library, make sure you get a journal and go through the questions and record the responses, your responses, and then reflect back on it so you can see the fruit. Once you have completed the dares and being able to go back and seeing how that has made a difference in the life of your marriage. So we are just going to jump right in to day 5, which is love is not rude. Okay, so we start with a verse. So he who blesses his friend with a loud voice early in the morning will not be reckoned a curse to him. Proverbs 27:14. So nothing irritates others as quickly as being rude. Rudeness excuse me, is unnecessarily saying or doing things that are unpleasant for another person to be around. To be rude is to act unbecoming, embarrassing, or disrespectful. In marriage, this could be a foul mouth, poor table manners, or a habit of making sarcastic quips. And nobody enjoys being around somebody who is rude to them, right? That's just not something that we as humans enjoy. None of us. We don't. And sometimes we'll be sarcastic back, or shoot back, but it still does not make us feel good. It still is not enjoyable. We think about wanting to be around that person less. In the future, maybe we might want to avoid them for the rest of the day, especially if it's our spouse. We can't avoid them forever typically. Excuse me, I have a tickle in my throat, so I just thought I needed to take a drink for a minute. So one of the key points that I want you to get here is nothing irritates others as quickly as being rude does. Okay, so the bottom line is that genuine love minds its manners, okay? So that's another key point. Genuine love minds its manners. Good manners say to our spouse, I value you enough to exercise self-control around you, okay? So I want to be a person who's a pleasure to be with, right? Don't you want to be a person that your spouse feels as if you're a pleasure to be around, and vice versa? Don't you want your spouse to be a pleasure to be around, right? We all want that. When you allow love to change your behavior, even in the smallest of ways, you restore an atmosphere of honor to your relationship. So people who practice good etiquette tend to raise the respect level in the environment and people around them. Okay, so a lot of times we act differently at home. We practice different etiquette than we do when we are out in other environments, like at work, or with our friends, or with our extended family members. They don't always see what's really truly going on behind closed doors, the doors of our home, in all cases. So we tend to act differently. We can tend to be more freer, to say what we want to say, to act on our emotions instead of controlling them. But we should be doing that at home with our spouses, with our children as well, and our children with us. They should be taught that as well. And we all, I have a 4-year-old and he can be quite moody. We joke that he's a I can never say that because it's 3-nager, but he didn't go through that so much at 3 with the attitude. Now it's at 4, and now I can't even say I made up a word for it, but it's hard to say. Fornigi. It doesn't want to come out. Teenager. So the more respectful and honorable your behavior, the more attractive and romantically appealing you become to your spouse, right? So if we go on a dare to actually love, right, which is what we're doing the love dare, you will want to give your best to your spouse. That's the intention. You want to learn how to give the best of yourself to your spouse. If you don't let love motivate you to make some needed changes in your behavior, you will unnecessarily limit the quality and environment level in your relationship. Okay, so a woman's choice to lace her speech with respectful tones is very effective in winning her husband's heart, persuading him and helping him to sense her love. In contrast, a wife can be very rude if she speaks down to her husband, ignores his decisions, or becomes argumentative. A husband shows great strength when he honors his wife by practicing self-control rather than doing whatever his feelings compel. There are two main reasons why people are rude, okay? So it comes from ignorance and self-centeredness. Neither, of course, is a good thing. A child is born ignorant of etiquette, needing lots of help and training to be taught that. They don't just develop it, they have to be taught that from us, right, as their parents. But a simple learning of basic etiquette can greatly help them learn discretion. We adults, however, display our ignorance on another level. Okay, so we know the rules, but we can be blind to how we break them or too self-centered to care. That's a hard pill to swallow, right? In fact, we may not even realize how unpleasant we can be to live with at times. So there are some questions in here that Alex and Stephen Kendrick have for us to test ourselves in this area. So how does your spouse feel about the way you speak and act around them? All right? How does your behavior affect your mate's sense of self-worth and self-esteem? Would your husband or wife say you're a blessing or that you're condescending and embarrassing? All right? So they go on to say that if you think that your wife or your husband is the only one that needs behavioral modification, then you are wrong and you need it also. And that you are suffering from a case of ignorance, that you're just refusing to see that change needs to happen within you too, and you need behavioral modification as well, right? So if you want your spouse to stop doing things like being rude or saying things or just doing anything that really bothers you, then you have to stop doing the things that bother them. You have to stop doing the things that irritate them, that they consider rude, or disrespectful, and you have to have behavioral modification as well. And we have to do this with our children as well. We're not talking about kids right now, but as a family and parent educator, I just thought that was important to say, is sometimes, not everybody watching is going to have children, but in situations, like this, we have to, again, it comes down to the golden rule, treat others the way that we want to be treated, and that is for our children too. That's not the societal norm with the concepts we've been taught in the past, but it is true. Children deserve respect as well. They deserve for us to modify our behavior to not be rude as well. So we have to sometimes practice that first to get them to change the way they're speaking to us as well. So, and that's not the easy choice in most situations. The easy choice is to get frustrated and mad. But even walking away in the moment is a strength, whether it's our spouse or another family member. Instead of, if you can't say something nice in return or not be rude back, then walking away and waiting until you calm down is really a strength. But coming back to that, especially if it's an ongoing issue, once you feel calm and you're able to come to talk to your spouse or your child, where you're more level-headed and calm. So remember that love is not rude, but it lifts us to a higher standard, okay? So there are 3 guiding principles of practicing etiquette, okay? So the golden rule, guard the golden rule, number 1. Treat your spouse the way that you want to be treated, okay? No double standards. Be as considerate to your spouse as you are to strangers, friends, and coworkers. All right. And number 3, honor requests your spouse has already asked you to do or not to do. Okay. So if your spouse is like continuously saying, this bothers me, this is, you know, a boundary I have, or this is not acceptable, or, you know, this is really, I really would appreciate it if you work to not do this anymore, and they're consistently doing that, or you're consistently doing that when your spouse has asked you and expressed a need to you, then that is, it's very self-centered and can be kind of ignorant too. You're not hearing them, you're not listening, and you're choosing to do what is best for you in the moment instead of what's best for your spouse, and that can go across the board with our children as well, right? So we want to just go over these principles again really, really quick, or just the strong points from today before we jump into the dare. So the verse for today is Proverbs 27:4, okay? And nothing irritates others as quickly as being rude does. That's not the verse. I just gave you the verse. I wasn't going to read it again. And then genuine love minds its manners, okay? Good manners say to our spouse, I value you enough to exercise self-control around you, right? Allow love to change your behavior and restore an atmosphere of honor around your relationship. And the more respectful and honorable your behavior, the more attractive and romantically appealing we become to each other, okay? So practice self-control. Figure out what is appropriate, because what's appropriate is going to look a little different in each relationship. And then we need to adjust our behavior accordingly, right? So, and then love lifts us to a higher standard. Would you dare to be a delight? So our 3 guiding principles for today of practicing etiquette is guard the golden rule, okay? Treat your spouse the way you wish to be treated. No double standards, all right? Being as considerate to your spouse as you are to your coworkers, your friends, extended family, to strangers, right? And honor requests your spouse has already asked you to do or not to do, okay? So practice active listening, and then really take what they're saying. Get to a place of, you know, where you're putting your own selfishness down, and where you're able to actively love your spouse by listening to them, by taking their requests seriously, and by working on behavioral modification in those areas that you need to. And we all have those areas. I have those areas. You have those areas. My spouse has those areas. We all do. As spouses, as parents, as people, we always have areas and rooms for improvement, especially in behavioral modification. Because what happens is we pick up these habits, and this is how we learn to respond every time. And if we're not careful, that's not always the appropriate way to respond. We're all guilty of this, right? So there's no shame in our game. It's only there's only room for learning something new, and for giving ourselves some grace as we are learning to behave or change our behavior, and and just be the best version of ourselves, right? And that's what we're working towards, is being the best versions of ourselves in our marriage, and learning what love is really truly means in action. So the dare today is ask your spouse to tell you 3 things that cause him or her to be uncomfortable or irritated with you. You must do so without attacking them or justifying your behavior. This is from their perspective only. And I just want to touch on that for a minute, because we each have different perspectives. And one of the things that I learned in school while I was taking a family therapy class, and I had to watch hours and hours and hours of therapy videos, was, you hear a lot in families, or when somebody's just talking to you and perhaps venting with you that this person did this and this was wrong and this was, and it just goes on, right? But then if you go talk to the other person has an entirely different story sometimes. So then it comes down to like, no, you're not telling the truth, you're lying, it didn't go like that, this is the way that it went. But this is the thing that I learned, is that there is room for both. The point is that we're all in different stages of development. Our brain is at different levels. We're all different. We're all unique. So this is the thing. My 4-year-old is not going to have the same perspective as I do, okay? Because he's 4. A teenager is not going to have the same perspective as an adult. A man is not going to have the same perspective as a woman. Even somebody that's the same age but has had different life experiences, their perspectives can be different, and oftentimes they will be there. And a lot of times too, it's how the situation has made us feel. Well, this person is bothered by something that this person isn't bothered by. This person thinks it's okay, and the next person is really irritated by it and thinks that the behavior is unbecoming or rude, right? So but that's why we have to have neutral conversations where we're calm and say, well, this is how this makes me feel when this happens, and I really need you to understand where I'm coming from. And the whole thing with getting defensive is, or just saying, no, you're wrong. That's not necessarily true. They just have a different perspective than you. We each have our own perspective of how events in our lives have played out and happened, and there's room for all of them. If we can come to a place where we can, really work on watching our mouths and how we speak and the way that we speak, and coming to a calm, neutral place to have an appropriate conversation about these things, then that's what's going to benefit us, most, by asking our spouse these questions, right? And being able to practice active listening and realizing that this is not a place of defense. This is where I need to get defensive. This is a genuine response to an answer or to a question that I asked, and I want to know this information so that I can really listen to my spouse, so I can take what they're saying and choose what I want to do with it. Because at the end of the day, we all have free will, and we get to choose what we want to do with the information given to us. And then we get to modify our behavior to what they're saying so that we can practice loving them appropriately. Why? If you're in any situation where there's love involved, why do you want to do something that is irritable to your loved ones? We shouldn't want to do that to our loved ones at all in any way, shape, or form. But we have to be able to have the appropriate conversations, and we have to be able to take each person's perspective without getting defensive. And that's not always the easiest thing to do, and that's why they teach us to wait until we're calm, right? So that's it for today, guys. I thank you for tuning into my channel. Please like and subscribe. Please like my channel, subscribe to my channel, share me with your friends, especially if there's somebody that you know that you think would benefit from this study today, or just this study in whole, where we can really just dig in and learn how to love in action for our spouses. And don't forget to tune in to the Love Dare for parents. Thank you. God bless and take care. My remote is not working today. Sorry.